In the 1950s, fear and violence escalate as the people of Algeria fight for independence from the French government. We're talking movies, we're talking the Battle of Algiers, starring Bram Khadid, Jean Martin, and Youssef Sadi, written by Franco Solanas and Gilo Pontecorvo, who also directed. Gentlemen, believe me, it's a vicious circle. We could talk for hours to no avail, because that isn't the problem. The problem is this: the FLN want to throw us out of Algeria, and we want to stay.
It's hard to start a revolution, even harder to continue it, and hardest of all, to win it. But it's only afterwards, when we have won, that the true difficulty begins. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? If you have been listening to our show for a while, you'll know that around Remembrance Day, we try to always do anti-war films or films that do not glorify violence. So this year, we're going to be doing the Battle of Algiers, which is like a classic film around colonialism and revolutionary spirit. Which right now I think is pretty suiting, continuing what's going on in the world. So, Scott, let's get into this film. Take it away.
Yeah, it is kind of a heavy topic to discuss, and anybody who's listened to our podcast, these are usually the episodes that I fucking dread, because most of the movies Chris picks are super boring.
Yeah, sorry. The anti-war films I pick are not more exciting for you. I'm sorry.
Like, listen, you can pick Battleship, people fighting against aliens. But yeah, like with this one, it was good. Like, and I think what made it good and what made it resonate a lot is the pseudo documentary filming that they did. Like, I thought it was literally a doc going through it until I finished it, and then was doing the research for this episode and seeing that it wasn't. I even saw when they released this in the States originally back in the 60s, it had a disclaimer that said not one foot of newsreel was used while they were filming this film. And that is amazing, because it engrossed me. And I'm not the history buff that you are, so I didn't really know about this battle until watching it. But yeah, it was I don't want to say an interesting movie to watch, but it was, I can see why it was, it's revered as it is now.
So I would say it's an interesting film, and I agree with you. I think all the critics agree with you that it is the way that it's shot. It feels like you're there. It feels like documentary footage. The fact that it is not, like, it's all fake. Like, they, everything is staged. Like you said, they did not use any, like, there's no intercutting with news footage. Like, the fact that even, like, when the French army, when the paratroopers show up, like that, they shoot that like it would have looked like when the French army actually showed up. Like, it's a beautiful film. The black and white quality is fantastic. You feel like not only are you there, but they also, it's weird because, like, France is basically colonized Algeria up to that point, and this battle in the capital city of Algiers, they still try to take this neutral position, right? Like, they don't make the French out to be any worse than they were. And they almost try and show, like, what the, like, logic of the French officers are in dealing with what they're considering terrorism. And is it the FLQ? No, it's not. That's
FLN.
FLN. Thank you. Again, another revolutionary movement. They're showing them as terrorists, but the FLN is showing themselves obviously as freedom fighters. And there's a line where Colonel Philippe Mathot, played by Jean Martin, uh, basically goes on about how, they want to call us Nazis and they want to do this. And he's like, but we fought Nazis in the French resistance. And like, we understand what it means to be colonized ourselves in a way. And I thought that was such a great way to approach this, because it would have been very easy to paint one side as good, one side as just all bad. And I think then it doesn't resonate the same way it does. And I think the advantage is the fact that it's not a French director or an Algerian director, it's an Italian director, right? So they don't have direct skin in the game. Like, I think it would have been very challenging, even for a French director, to either totally demonize the French, like take like a 100%
You
Algerian
mean
approach.
Algerian?
No. Or the other way, right? Like, a French director could either be super, super pro French or super, super anti French. And I think having it in the hands of an Italian director gave it the nuance that war has, that conflict has. I mean, often, like, again, this is not a political podcast, so we're not going to go down that. So I think that for this historical event, they did a very, very good job of showing what each side was bringing to the table.
Yeah, like it's the old adage, right? You can't have a war without war crimes, right? And you saw that, like you said, it was very it was down the middle. It wasn't really pro anybody, and you saw the viciousness that each side of the conflict did. You saw the torture that the French soldiers were doing to the captives, and you saw the FLN when they were just in what was called the vans, just like pretty much just gun downing civilians.
Yeah. Or blowing up like little cafes and well, they wouldn't have been discotheques, but you know what I mean? Like little markets and using explosives against the civilian population.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, like it didn't glorify, it didn't glorify each of the actions, and in reality by the end of it, it demonized both, right? Because they would undercut it with like the little like subtitles or subcube, and it would be like kind of like what the UN was like thinking or was responding. It was like, oh, we hope that this can be resolved diplomatically instead of that. And then just seeing how it kind of like broke down, and then how it eventually resolved after the fact, right? Like I'll say like the acting was fucking great, like in this. If you
So
don't.
I want to talk about that because when I was doing my notes for this is shocking. Okay, so Jean Martin plays the colonel. The actual person was in the French resistance, and he also was a paratrooper in Indochina, which is Vietnam prior to the French leaving. So you've got an actor playing a paratrooper colonel who was a paratrooper, and then you have Sadi Yassif, who was basically playing the leader of the FON, who literally was an Algerian independence fighter, and he served as the leader of the National Liberation Front during the country's War of Independence. So these fucking two guys aren't even really acting. They're just basically being themselves because they were in or near those events in real life, which is fucking crazy. And it shows. Like, they feel so real. And honestly, also like Brahim Ragag, who plays Ali Lapointe, like, man, he's like this kind of like cool revolutionary fighter. Like, I mean, like on that side, they do just such a great job of like making him feel like the picture perfect revolutionary fighter. He's got the like dark kind of
Well,
handsome look, and like he kicks ass and takes names, and like he did a
somewhat.
fantastic job.
Yeah, somewhat. But they also did like it wasn't, but I called it like the walk of shame kind of thing, when he like close to the beginning, when it like flashes back to him, like kind of his recruitment, how they recruited him into that thing, and he's getting arrested, and it's all the pretty much who he was like before it, and they're like, oh, he's illiterate, he can't read, he has no education, he used to be a bricklayer, he used to be this, he used to be that kind of thing. And then just seeing because that went on for like two minutes where it was just like technically him being escorted towards the camera, and it just like got closer and closer to his face, and then until he get into it. And then even that scene when it was like his initiation where he had to like they do like
with the
the
gun.
yeah, with the it was kind of like the Guy Ritchie kind of motive, I guess. And maybe this is where Ritchie got from it, is where they're talking about what he's gonna do while you're watching it. Like, okay, you're gonna go here, you're gonna see a police, and you're just seeing like it's like a narration, and they're like talking. And then you see the woman has the basket, she's gonna hand you a gun, and you're gonna shoot him in the back. But then his cockiness kind of backfires where he goes, instead of shooting him to the back, he like goes in front so the cop can see his face kind of thing. And that's when he like realizes it wasn't loaded, and he was like, you bitch, you set me up.
Yeah, if he would have just done what he was told, he wouldn't have gotten arrested. But because he was like,
Well, he didn't get arrested, they escaped.
or sorry,
But
yeah,
he thought
but
they were setting him up to get killed.
yeah. Sorry, you're right about that. But if he would have just done what he was told, the gun wouldn't have gone off. The police officer would have known. They would have known that he was trustworthy. But yeah, like his arrogance basically, and his wanting the colonial police officer to know, like, look, this is the face of death. This is what you will see before you die. And then click. And that scene has such great tension too, because you're like, you think what's going to happen. And unfortunately, if you like, it'll still be good when you see it. If you listen to this podcast, I should have probably put in a spoiler alert, because like I did not expect what happened to happen, and then I was like, oh shit,
Yeah, same here.
This guy's fucked.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like with this film too, like it kind of puts some what do I want to say, some resentment I have now towards you, because you're like, hey, you can rent this from Apple. So then I'm like, hey, this is on the Crichton collection, and I can just subscribe and get 7 days, just watch it for free, and then
I'm sorry.
unsubscribe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't concerned about your very tight finances over there.
But that's the thing. Once I subscribe and I see all the shit that's on here, I'm like, motherfucker, this is gonna be a bit before I unsubscribe this. I'm like, there's a shit ton of like old and recent like good fucking films that like,
oh, and Criterion collection.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this was in the Criterion collection until I had already rented it, and then I was like, oh shit. Whatever. Like, I think it cost me $3. It was fine.
Yeah. Now it's gonna cost me $14.99 a month.
Yeah, and you'll forget to unsubscribe to that. So my quote this week is from Eric Hines from The Village Voice, and he says, it uses realism as an effect, documentary as a style. You feel that you're really there, and you can't help but be moved. 100%. 100%. I mean, I highly recommend this film for anybody who's like into film or into history, whether it's military history or not. I mean, I don't think this is the type of thing you're just gonna like throw on for your fam jam to like chill out and watch on a, I don't know, Sunday afternoon or something like that. I mean, it would be probably good for them. It's definitely a good history lesson. But yeah, anybody who's interested in like the history of cinema, again, or like geopolitics, any of this type of stuff, like this is a very important film. It's also really important in the history of revolutionary activity in the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. I mean, I missaid the FLQ, which is the separatist movement that came out of Quebec here in Canada. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about that lately. And a lot of those dudes watch this film to kind of give them tips, and it was like the go-to film for like the Black Panthers and all those people in the 60s and 70s that were doing revolutionary work. It was like their hype movie. They're like, we're gonna go watch this fucking film and watch the French basically eventually lose, you know what I mean, and kind of get them like jazzed up. And again, it is basically a how-to guide of how to run a revolutionary movement, because the French show you like why it's so difficult to break up an organization that's created in cells, the triangles, right? So I mean, you could just watch that and be like, okay, so this is how we do asymmetrical warfare. You know what I mean? So you could just watch that movie and then you could apply it and then you can go do revolutionary shit. You know what I mean?
Well, let's put a context in terms of what the revolution shit you want to do is. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I do find it weird that like you're saying that this was a hype movie for all these people because all the leaders of this revolution die before the end of the movie. So I don't know why you want to hype yourself up knowing you're probably gonna die. But
Is Algeria a country now?
yes,
That's right. That's why it's a hype movie, because in the end, it worked. Is Vietnam a
well,
country now? You know what I mean? So
I was
this
gonna
is
say
why these people
is Quebec
thought
a
this was
country
like a
now?
hype movie.
But here's the thing that I thought was kind of interesting about this, like a couple of tidbits while doing research. One, like this movie was banned in France for a while. Um, but also it's one of the few films in Oscar history to be nominated in two separate non-consecutive years. It
I don't even know
was
how that happens.
yeah, me neither. That's why I wanted to ask you if you would know because you're like the
I
guy
don't know.
for
Maybe
that.
the Academy had different rules then, because this was listed as a foreign film as well. So because I think it was
2 years
the first.
apart.
Yeah. So it got its best foreign film and best screenplay nominations, and then I believe it was the next year it got a best director nomination. Again, I don't know if they had a different time frame, because like now it's kind of like a 365-day period. Boom. Like there would be
Well,
no
that's
way
what
for this to.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you because forum film was 2 years before. I'm like, so could you back then? I don't know if you still could now. Um, but you were if your film released in like say France in that year, you submitted as foreign film. But when it gets picked up and released in the US 2 years later, let's say, can you
Mm.
then resubmit it? Because now it's not a foreign film, it's in your market, right? And that's why then it got nominated for screenplay and direction.
Yeah. You know what? You actually might be onto something there. That's some that I can't find anything wrong with that logic. It's quite possible. Again,
Because
I'm not.
nowadays it's all released at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? You might be onto something. If anybody's listening to this and actually knows an answer to that, hit us up on either social media or at our website or whatever. Um, this is such a like amazing film, and it's got a fantastic score by the man Ennio Morricone, right? Like, so if you know anything about film, anything about movies, you've heard of a little director named Sergio Leone or Corbucci. Obviously, Morricone did all those famous scores, the Dollars trilogy, Once a Time in the West. I don't even have all the stuff here, right? So you've got Navajo Joe, The Hellbenders, Mercenary, The Great Silence from Corbucci, and we haven't done this in a while. Get ready to drink. He did the score for The Hateful Eight for Quentin Tarantino. But also, Tarantino uses his stuff often in his films. Specifically, if you go and watch Inglourious Bastards, I think it's basically the theme song of the Bastards is the Algiers November 1954 song or arrangement by Ennio Morricone, which because I'm watching the film and I'm like, man, I fucking know this. That like dun 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 dun. I was like, I fucking know this from somewhere. So I, do some Google searching and I'm like, bang, it's from Inglorious Bastards. And it's like, again, like the score in this is fucking fantastic. I don't know. Like Morricone has like a massive, massive filmography as far as like a conductor or sorry, a composer. I don't know if he's done any bad work. Like again, if you know some like bad Morricone scores, let me know, because like the guy has like the classic, like the wah 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 wah. That's him too. Like some of the most famous. He's like the Italian John Williams. You know what I mean?
That's him too. That was him too.
That was him too. He literally did that.
Oh
Yeah,
my
he's like the Italian John Williams. Actually, I don't know. I almost think he's bigger than John Williams, like because his stuff is like
Chris.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Nobody's bigger than John Williams.
Even John Williams
Nobody's
isn't bigger than John Williams.
nobody's bigger than John Williams. Nobody.
So did you, I'm assuming because you were getting you probably did not drag anybody else in to watch this film.
No, no. Yeah, I like when I saw it black and white, like everything, I knew it wouldn't be something that the kids would listen to or watch. I tried to because they do go to French school and it was all in fucking French. I was like, listen, I don't need the fucking subtitles. I don't need to read this movie. You just act it out for me. I'm like, you be this guy, you be this guy. He says something, you say it in English to me. But they didn't want to do that for me. But yeah, like it was like yeah, it was good. Like it was good. I can see where, like I said before, like I can see where all the acclaim is coming from because it is. I will say it is one of those ones that it is like one engrossing because everything, like especially when you find out after, because even like we were saying before, like none of the new reels is it. So spoiler, the house of Ale Lapointe, where they blow it up, they reconstructed the house there to the precise site where his real house was and then fucking blew it up. Right? Like it just makes you think like back then, like what kind of budget did Italian filmmakers like fucking have where they're like, we're just gonna build the fucking house on a site like in a residential area just to fucking blow it up.
So, and again, maybe our producer can run these numbers while we're chatting. It had an $800,000 budget at the time. It did 870 at the box office. So yeah, we'll get some inflation kind of numbers and figure out what this budget was. But yeah, this thing is, like I said, just like, so they used a lot of like non-actors. There's tons of background. Like again, like whether it's village people, city people, fucking entire French regiments marching down the street in full uniform. Like they did an amazing job basically recreating this film. Like I cannot speak more or highly enough about like the set dressing and the art direction that goes into this film. And again, it's
like I was gonna say, like, to just compliment what you're saying, it's like you look at this like 19, well, when was this film?
66 is when it came out, so I don't know, probably shooting in 65, something like that.
Yeah, you look at these movies, you look at like all the like Cecil B. DeMille movies, and then you're just thinking to yourself like, fucking Peter Jackson, how the fuck did you have to CGI all those people in Lord of the Rings, man?
Why couldn't you just get real orcs?
Yeah, like you get people fucking dressed up. Like if these motherfuckers can do it, like 3 decades prior, like come on, now you feel kind of cheated, right?
They have, because it's like they have entire cities like that are full populated by people. There's people in houses, there's people at checkpoints, there's all of this stuff happening. Like I couldn't even imagine wrangling all that background. Like it would have been a fucking nightmare. And it feels so real. Like I know we keep saying this and we keep saying it, and it's like, that cinema verite style and blah blah blah, but like go watch this fucking movie and you cannot help but be impressed at all. And I love black and white from that time, that high quality black and white, where you just like, you forget that you're not watching a color film. Like you're not like, oh man, this is in black and white. Like you get immersed in it. It's like Schindler's List. You very quickly forget that it's in black and white because it's so well lit and composed, because that's like, they were not fucking around. Like these are very professional people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. I think in reality, like if it was in color, right? Like with the amount of bloodshed and all that shit they would have to have done, it would have probably like not have been released at all, because especially if everybody like looking at it now feels documentary style, it's like you're pretty much going to be watching a snuff film kind of thing if it was in color, watching all that blood spray and all that shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I can not speak like any like it. I can only speak very highly of this film. I definitely think that you should watch this piece of cinema. Like it's fantastic. It's 2 hours. I mean, it's fine. I don't feel like it gets boring at any point. Just the way the pacing works really well. There's great tension. There's great tension around like whether it's the French, coming in to try and clear the Casbahs, or that a bomb is going to go off in like a music cafe or something like that, and you're waiting for this stuff. Like it's just such a great film as far as like from a filmmaking perspective. It's got a 99% from the critics, it's like, why not just give it a fucking 100%? Like, I should actually have gone through and found the like one asshole that was like blah blah blah. It was probably some guy like me, right? Some fucking prick like me who was just like, this film cannot have 100%. It's got a 95% from the audience, which I think is very impressive considering the subject matter. Black and white film, 1966. Yeah, man, like, I don't know if there's really anything else you want to talk about, because I don't really want to get into like the nitty gritty of like the Battle of Algiers or the Battle for Algeria, because this podcast would then be super, super long, and I am not an expert on those subjects, and I will fuck that up. And again, with what's going on in the world right now, I really don't want to like step in any of those conversations.
And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com. I found your guy. His name is Tony Medley from TonyMedley.com, who gave this, not the tomato, but this, whatever it is. What's the bad one?
Isn't it a Rotten Tomato? Isn't that
sure?
Isn't that what it is?
Like
it's
a
literally
green,
called
it
Rotten
looks
Tomatoes.
it looks like green jizz. I don't know. It looks like a green fucking cum shot. But it goes. This was his review. Ready? It was back in 2004. This film has received a lot of praise from critics, but not that many people will find this that entertaining. And that was it. So he gave it 5 out of 10.
So he was you. He was like, I watched this movie about this anti-war film and it wasn't entertaining enough. So he was the Scott, not the Chris. That's fantastic. Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.